Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hey, welcome to Parents Time Out. This is the time where we gather together with other parents and share ideas and learn from one another, because we know that parenting shouldn't be done in isolation. I'm Kim Botto. I lead Kids Club at Crossroads, and whether you are watching live or whether you're watching hours or days later, we're glad you're here. And and also I'm the mom of 5. And as of just a few hours ago, I'm now the grandmother of 8. And I've been up since 3:30 a.m. So I'm a little tired. So I'm counting on our guests, Paul and Amy Owens, to keep us on track. These are my friends, Paul and Amy Owens. They are the parents of 4 just precious boys. I have worked with Paul for a really long time. Gosh, Paul, has it been like 15 years?
15 years.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And Amy, I love Amy. Amy, actually, I have she did our family mission statement for us, and it's beautiful. I think of you every time I look at it. But they're here tonight because they're going to talk about intentional parenting. And for some of us, you might be thinking, intentional parenting, oh, please, I am just trying to survive. I'm just trying to keep my children alive and well fed. And we think that there's a better way, and that it's not super complicated. So Paul and Amy. Oh, and Paul is, I am a little distracted. I'm a little sleep deprived. Paul is the spiritual growth leader at Crossroads Uptown, which that means that he leads groups and he helps develop people, and he helps when there are groups that just want to, maybe they're curious about who Jesus is and how they grow in their faith. And Paul comes in and he mentors and teaches and coaches a whole bunch of people. And then Amy homeschools her kids, and she also started a mom's group on Facebook back in 2011. It's got thousands of moms on it, and it has been such a resource to so many people. That's using Facebook for good, Amy. So thank you. What did I leave out on your introduction? What do you want people to know about you?
Well, they are sons, Urban, Otto, Abram, and Ezra. That's on the screen. We also, my parents live with us. That's another thing. They're not sick. We actually are interested in living with multiple generations. And we've been doing that for several years and learning a lot about how to be together with my parents. So that's another thing. What else? Anything else?
I don't know. Nope, I think that's good.
All right.
Amy's a twin. I didn't know that. I thought sometimes she was really friendly to me and other times she wasn't. Turns out there's another person that looks a lot like her. So when I was speaking to her, she didn't know me. And actually, Jen is very, very nice and kind. It's just more familiar than you would expect. A stranger.
High school, and her students would talk to me all the time, or at least point at me in stores. And I'd be like, yeah, there's a young, teenage girl looking at me funny and low. It's weird, but yeah.
My teacher teaches them. My sister teaches them. Okay, so as people are popping on, if you are watching, we would love to know where you're from, maybe a parenting challenge that you want to talk about tonight. And also, as we talk about being intentional in parenting, as we're intentional in parenting, we also need to be intentional in the relationships we have with other adults. So for us, we're all married, and I would love to know, what's your favorite date night? Maybe you can inspire some other people on something fun to do with their spouse, or if you're single, maybe to do with a friend. What's your favorite date night?
Well, we a while ago when we had little babies, so our oldest is 11 now and the youngest just turned 5. We just couldn't leave the house to have dates. And so we just sort of created a date night at home. And We do go on dates occasionally out to restaurants and stuff and movies or whatever. But one of our favorite things to do is just to have wine and popcorn and sit out on the deck. We just moved about a year ago, and we used to live in Walnut Hills, where it was just a really busy urban area, and our patio or porch faced a busy street. And we just even loved sitting out there and watching people go by and talking. And really what we learned is that just giving us the space to talk is just huge. And that's what we really craved and needed every week. Yeah. So communication. We just like to sit at home. It sounds kind of boring, but we play games a lot. And that's our favorite.
Yeah, it's we found that we wouldn't do it if the bar was set too high. So if it had sort of like, we must make this romantic, or we must spend a certain amount of money, or we must get childcare, all of the roadblocks that cause you to not have a date night. We just said, how can we remove as many as possible so we can do this every week? And we ended up with wine and popcorn on the porch. And now when we go out, we find that we have better conversation at home with wine and popcorn than we do when we go out and try to do a bunch of other things.
Which has worked really well for this COVID time. But we did go on a date for our anniversary about a month ago, and we went to a restaurant and sat outside, and it was wonderful. So we really loved that.
Love going out.
Yeah, I have heard more couples now that are doing the at-home dating, where they put the kids to bed. When our kids were little, we always thought you had to get a babysitter, you had to go out. And we can think about we got to about the third kid, it just wasn't sustainable. I mean, by the time you paid for your babysitter, and you're getting, Chipotle carry out and drinking water. So we started doing that. We started having popcorn, and that was back in the day where you'd rent a movie.
Yeah.
And so we weren't talking. Sometimes we were just vegging out.
Well, sometimes you just need to veg out.
We veg sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if you're watching and you have great ideas for date nights, please tell us. And also, Amy, I want to tell you, Abby Rasmussen said that hands down, your mom's group is the best mom's group on Facebook.
Oh, yay. That's great.
I think it is. And we will, at some point, put a link to that group in the comments. And you have to be a mom, and there's some questions that you have to answer in order to get in the group. And it's mostly young moms, moms with kids at home.
A lot of young moms.
Yeah, but it is a great group. Okay, so we're talking about intentional parenting tonight. Parents, if you're watching and you have questions, these are Paul and Amy. They're a family that their kids are older. They've got 4 kids. If you have questions for them, go ahead and put them in there. And first of all, we're talking about intentional parenting. What does that even mean, to be intentional? Tell us.
Well, it could mean a lot of things. It's a popular word right now in the family space, or really in the culture. But there's a verse that we like to start with pretty much all the time. It's Romans 12:2. And it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve God's will, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So there's sort of an order to that. It says, hey, don't conform to sort of the patterns that are visible in the world. And that can go up across the board, not just parenting, not just family. And then let the Lord change the way you think, be transformed. And God does that transformation. And he changes the way your brain works, which is kind of crazy to think about, but renewal of your mind. And then the third part of it is, then you'll be able to sort of try some stuff out and see what his will is for your life. And I think we often don't do the first 2 steps and sit around and wait for God to tell us what to do. But it's a step of faith to sort of take a look at the patterns of the world or the culture and reject them, the destructive ones. Not all of them are bad. But when you reject them, then you create a space for other stuff to happen. And Paul in the Bible says, hey, God's going to fill that space with his ways. So that's what intentionality looks like for us.
So you're saying reject some of the norms of the world.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Give me an example of what are things that you have rejected, you and Amy.
Wow. Let's see. There's a bunch. You got anything on your mind?
Well, we could talk about Sabbath.
Sabbath is one. So one is workaholism. So that's I mean, you can go just look at all of the challenges that we face in our culture, and you can say, hey, that's a normal thing that everybody's doing. So workaholism, for especially, whatever that looks like for your family, especially working 7 days a week. And so we've chosen to say, hey, there's a better way, that God's actually designed us for a rhythm of 6 days of work and then taking 1 day off. It's called Sabbath, and it means to cease. So stop work. And that's one really, really great rhythm that has been really life-changing for us. It impacts the whole rest of the week. When you take away a day of work that you're used to getting stuff done and be productive, then you got to deal with the rest of those days. And it's a big deal. So that's one. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really great. Take a day off. What happens if you work weekends? Or what happens, like for me, I work weekends and my husband works Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
How can I possibly take 24 hours where my whole family is resting?
You can find a new husband. That would be one way. I'm totally joking.
Oh, my husband.
Being dorky.
I'm joking. Don't do that.
I think that is a great question.
It's a great question.
There's always, it's just, there's so many setbacks for everybody. And I think if taking a day of rest is important to you and your family, and it looks like it's going to be difficult to do, you have to just sit down with your spouse and family and look at the calendar and be like, look, we need to have some time together where we don't work. How about this month, in this October coming up, are there 2 to 3 days that we can take through this month where we will spend together and not work? And just schedule them. That's what, a lot of people have to do that work weekends or have different jobs. You just have to be intentional about it ahead of time and not, just let the weeks go by and be like, when are we going to rest? It may not be a full 24 hours for your whole family. Maybe you get a chunk on Thursday night and then you get 4 hours on Saturday morning with the family. It might look different for every family. And sometimes it doesn't happen every week, or, there's lots of things that can come up that, make it not work for us. But it's not like set in stone. It's not a rule, but it's a gift that we have from the Lord that we want to use. And we have found that it has just been super enriching for our family. I know a lot of young moms are like, or just moms of any age really, but I have babies, I have small children, I'm working all the time. What does a day of rest mean for me? And so I think that is something that was really hard for us when we first started practicing the Sabbath. And what we have found is that we do things that fill us up, that help us enjoy our family. And we try to, eliminate, like, I don't make breakfast, Paul and the kids make pancakes, and I don't even I sit and read a book while they make breakfast, we, maybe go out to eat a meal, grab some carry out or whatever. We'll try to maybe go on a family hike or take a walk or play Frisbee, do something that the family enjoys doing together. We play games, we watch a movie. I try not to do laundry, we do dishes and all that stuff, but it's just a different attitude. It's not like you're going to be spending a day at the spa. You're not going to be weighted on hand and foot. I mean, that could happen, but I think our culture really tells us that resting is going to be like you're laying down being served, by the pool.
Right.
That's wonderful rest. And we think that's important, but that's not necessarily what your Sabbath is going to look like on a week-to-week basis.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you pointed out the fact that for some, maybe you're just going to start out with 4 hours. Maybe it's going to be from dinner on Friday till bedtime on Friday. And that's great. And, I was back before COVID on January, February, I went to Israel and actually sat by a woman who was raised Jewish, and they believe in Jesus. And she was talking about the importance of the Sabbath. And she has teenagers. And I said, how do you do it with teenagers? And she said, what do you mean? How do I do? We just do it. And all of our friends do it. And Friday at dinner time, all the electronics go into a basket And she had I think 5 teenagers. She said they all go in the basket, and then all the friends come over the next day. She said, of course, now since their electronics are in a basket, you have to make plans ahead of time because you can't get a hold of anybody because all of their Jewish friends, their phones are turned off. And she said it has been the most beneficial thing that they have done. And Aaron asked, what do your Sabbaths look like? And I know for my son, and he has 3 small children, they do it. It starts out on Friday, and they have a special dinner. Now, special, it doesn't mean that it's fancy, but sometimes they'll use plastic champagne glasses and they get watered down Fanta on Friday. That's the only time they get Fanta. And they always have dessert on Friday, and they don't have dessert other days of the week. And Paul and Amy and I, we've talked about Sabbath a lot over the years, but it doesn't have to be a fancy $40 dessert. Sometimes if they've forgotten to do a dessert, they'll call us, and on our way over on Friday, we'll pick up a package of M&Ms, and then we'll just split the M&Ms among all of us. And it's just a time where the kids, and they have a ritual of certain things they say every time. And even the 3-year-old can repeat, that this is our time to rest, to remember that we don't have to work because Jesus did the work so that we can rest. What are some other things that you all do for Sabbath?
Yeah, the meal is a big deal for us. That kickoff meal, it's very similar. We've been doing it for several years, and we want to make that sort of this thing that the kids look forward to the most. And so it marks a moment and sets apart a day. And if you don't have that mark the moment and space to set it apart, and you just sort of like merge days like we tend to do, it's really hard to feel like this day is different than the rest. So we kind of do everything to make this as fun as possible. A couple things that we do at that meal is we'll tell stories. So this is a big, we felt like we wanted to develop a storytelling culture in our family. So the adults will tell stories about when they were kids to the kids, and we'll pick a theme each week. And it's really simple, but it becomes like a big highlight, and the kids can't wait to hear stories. And we usually have my parents with us as well. So And
the story themes are simple. It'll be like, tell us a story about bikes from when you were a kid. Well, of course, Grandpa had a paper route and has just amazing, hilarious stories about riding his bike, doing, his paper delivery. And, the kids just eat that stuff up. They just want to hear about what we experienced as kids. So,
one recent one that we've found that was a surpriser is we're telling stories about fighting, and when we got into fights as adults. So our kids are always getting in fights, and you're like, stop fighting. And then we're telling them proactive stories about like, hey, we fought, and we, and I mean, like, they couldn't get enough. Jaws dropped, kind of like, Dad pushed that guy over the weight thing in his high school deal. And then they can't get enough of that stuff.
And telling stories with kids, that's what helps make kids resilient. There's been all kinds of stories that show the more the kids know about their family history and the stories of their mom and dad, the more resilient they are, because our kids, they think that I was only with Mark ever. They don't know about people that dumped me, where I got my heart broken. And for them to know, especially teenagers, know that we flunked tests, and that we got fired from jobs, and that we had our heart broken. Then all of a sudden, when it happens to them, they go, oh,
we're normal.
It didn't happen to my mom or dad. And that's fine. So telling stories is great. Abby Rasmussen has a question on how do you stay focused on the end goal of being intentional when it feels like every day is just about surviving?
Well, one phrase that I like to use is it's an urgent long game. So urgent long game, like if we don't start something, then it never gets started. So we need to feel an urgency about it, doing intentional things to create culture. So culture is not something that happens in a household, because we did one thing one weekend and now we magically have culture. Culture is something that you start and you have to practice and repeat over and over again, develop language around, develop rhythms around, and eventually someday, like we have to have hope in sort of a different culture that we've created in our home. But that sort of the long game aspect. But if you don't start now, then the culture never gets created. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the decisions we've made, you don't necessarily see immediate results. Like homeschooling. We're doing that crazy business, and it's hard. It's real hard.
It's hard.
And
hard today and yesterday.
And just a couple days ago, I had a major breakthrough with a kid who's 9 with reading. And, he's been trying to learn how to read since he was 5.5, 6, So I know that what I'm doing was a good decision, but it's out. I'm not going to see the results until much later. And that's really hard.
Right.
But, when you make intentional decisions to, turn off the TV and push the kids outside, and then you see them out there having fun together and, enjoying the whole afternoon outside, when they would have watched a show and then been like, I'm bored. What am I going to do? It's like,
and they're out there getting dirty, taking risks, trying things that they didn't think they could do.
Yeah.
One real practical thing we just did, we just moved into a different house from really a city, like busy street, kind of crazy, kind of tense atmosphere. And we've only been here a year in the new house, and there's woods behind our house, which is the coolest thing ever. So this is a blessing. We're new to this idea, but we realized really quick that our kids we thought they'd just naturally go play in the woods, and they didn't do it. We're like, what is wrong? We have weirdo kids. They won't go play. So all of August, we came up with an idea, and this is like what intentionality looks like. It's like developing culture and rhythms and patterns that become habits. And then the habits turn into something bigger over time. But we just said, hey, we need to do this 31 days in the woods thing. So we took the whole month of August. I made this is our chalkboard back here. I made a big chart on the board with everybody's name on it, and every day of August. And so and the whole goal was everybody in the family, including the parents, have to be 30 minutes in the woods, at least 30 minutes in the woods every day of August. And then we made a big deal of it. Every day we'd check it off and all this stuff. And it felt good to have a visible reminder of it, and the kids were excited about it. And at the end of that, they were like, that was good. And we had to practice at being good at being in the woods, which doesn't seem like you should have to do with 4 boys, but they grew up on a busy street where we kept telling them, don't go out there. It's really scary. And those cars are going to crash. And they did. They crashed a lot in front of our house. So we had to learn how to do something that seemed like it should be easy, but it takes concentration.
Right. It's just like our Sabbath. Like we kind of talk about practicing the Sabbath. We're not going to get it right the first try. And you do a Sabbath day, and you're like, I actually looked at my phone and answered this many emails, and I just did a bad job, and I'm done with Sabbath. Like, no, try it again next week. You'll do better. And over the years, we've gotten better and better.
And that magical meal that we described that kicks off Sabbath
it was a mess.
Is not magical.
That's right.
Absolute mess.
We like to have people
under
over.
the table and
and we're like, hey, you think you know what you're getting into when we have guests over pre-COVID. And then they realize, oh, these people are all jacked up just like me. Their kids are all crazy, and it's wild because they're little and it's fun. We want to make it fun. So we're not like, we're like, let's make this about them. And there was one night I just lost it, like dads do, like moms do.
You had a little tantrum.
Tantrum, we call it Shabbat. So I did, and I shut it down. I sent our guests home. Like, we're done.
Yeah, it was family.
And, it was family. It was her twin sister. I was like, Shabbat, it's done. You got to go. And I sent them out. And they were like looking at me like I'm crazy. And then I noticed it in the moment. I'm like, oh, I made a mistake, but I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back then. That would be too crazy. So yeah, there's times like you just shut it down, and you just get angry like everybody else.
And then when we do things like that, then we go back, and once we have our wits about us, we apologize to our kids. We say what we're going to do different next time. We have another question. Oh, I want to say one thing about getting outside. If you do not live by the woods, my daughter started, it was probably 2 years ago. She realized that everybody's temperament was better if they got outside. And she lives in a suburban setting. I mean, no woods. Well, she actually moved in addition to having a baby today, my daughter moved. So we have 4 children under the age of 5 asleep upstairs right now. But what she did is they got outside every day for 15 minutes. And even if it was pouring down rain the whole day, they would just go outside in the rain. And she said everybody's mental health was so much better just having that daily rhythm of getting outside. So you don't have to have the woods to get outside. Just get outside.
No, I mean,
Abby had another question. Top 3 things to begin doing to be a more intentional family.
Well, I think number 1 is date night. If you're married, so there may be people listening to that aren't married, and that's okay. Totally cool. But if you're married, date night has to be the number 1 priority, 100%. If you don't communicate, none of this stuff works. So if you don't have a space in your week that you can actually talk about what the week looks like and even connect just like emotionally and share what's going on in your head. So when we talk with couples, that's like priority number 1. You must have a date night every week. We are big on the weekly rhythms. So that's pretty much most of what we do. We have some annual things. We do some daily things that are really cool that we like. But
like what?
The culture, some daily things.
Yeah.
We start the day with work. That's one of those things. We get kids working as soon as they're up out of bed, like
chores,
doing all the kitchen.
We
chores.
call them jobs.
Yeah, jobs.
Because they're necessary to have our family work.
Yeah.
I don't like the word chores.
And we give them labels, like each of them has a name, like the silverware sorter and the dishwasher director and Captain Countertop and kitchen coach.
Yeah.
And so all 4 of them have an actual label that they know what that job entails. And like, talk about urgent long game. We've been doing this since our 11-year-old was about 3 or 2. Yeah. And they all graduate into new and bigger jobs with more responsibility, including cooking. And now on Saturday, so he's 11 now. Okay, this is 9 years of work, 9 years of daily, like, we're going to be in the kitchen with our kids because we think this is really, really important to start the day with work, and working as a team. That's another team culture thing. The last few weeks on Sabbath, we have stayed in bed and our kids have made the whole breakfast before we came out.
Pancakes with chocolate
Bacon
chips,
and eggs and
eggs.
Just
coffee.
Awesome. Coffee.
The 11-year-old makes our coffee every day.
Yeah, so
because we've just trained it.
It's like a daily thing for 9 years. So this doesn't happen overnight.
No.
This is like urgent long game. Start now, so you have a thing that happens later on.
And I'll say too, I love the giving titles. That kids love that.
That'll be fun.
Titles. It's so fun. But also, if we're gonna have our kids do stuff, like if they're gonna make coffee for us, we can't criticize it and say, "Oh my gosh, you made it with grounds," or we have to drink it with grounds. And then the next Saturday, maybe we get up early and we go, "Hey, let's make it together," and retrain them because obviously something's missing. But that was one thing I learned early on, like when my kids were making their beds, and then I'd come in behind them and like tidy it up a little bit. And what I was telling them was they weren't capable of making their bed. So parents, you got to accept less than perfection.
Oh yeah.
Time from our kids.
Like when they put the towels away in the linen closet, they just look a mess. And I just have to be like, but I didn't do it. And
that's right. That's right. Paul, I'm sorry. So you were talking about the 3 things. And
Date night.
Date night.
We say date night and Sabbath Sabbath is the next one. So we talked a lot about Sabbath as something that happens every week. And for us, we do a family meeting thing every week that is really helpful to communicate with our kids. Now, this didn't start until the kids got a little bit older. So our kids are 11, 9, 7 almost, and 5 almost. That was sorry, I'm looking at some of the comments. Go ahead. Family meeting.
So that's a once a week, and it's just a way for us to connect. We talk about our highs and lows of the week. Yes. We we have a marble system of rewards that we kind of give out candy and so it's just like a way for us to connect with our kids, and they love that too.
Yep. And it gives us a chance to talk about what worked for the week and what didn't work for the week, and then set up We do some Bible verses at home over breakfast. So there's a bunch of little things that we set up with that weekly meeting with the family. But it doesn't work until your kids get a little older. So
Right.
That's where we watch our Kids Club at Home videos too.
Yeah, we do Kids Club at home with that.
During that
and
time.
it's a perfect, like if you don't have the venue set up, you oftentimes will never do it. So that weekly 45 minutes that we've got on our calendar, our kids know we call it team time. They know the things that happen there, and part of it is we watch a Kids Club at Home video and we talk about it. And usually there's a Bible verse that comes out of that, and we'll put it up on the chalkboard for the week, and we'll try to memorize it together. So those are a bunch of things. Yeah,
that's helpful. And Amy was commenting, like talking about having your kids do stuff. She said, like loading the dishwasher. I just have to be happy that the dishes are in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah.
And I am the worst. I do that with my adult children. You know, I come behind them and redo the dishwasher. Not helpful at all. Okay, so we are, we're out of time. So Paul and Amy, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to give to our parents?
One real quick one. We do have a class that we teach at Crossroads. It's online and it pops up in the next one is going to start on November 3rd on a Tuesday night, right after the Crossroads journey ends. So we're going to do a 3-week module on Enneagram for couples. Really, it's not just for young families. Most of the time it is, but this applies to sort of marriage investment stuff. So if you're interested in that Enneagram thing, then you can register. I think there may be a link somewhere. If not, you can just
she's going to put a link up.
So you're invited. You can just come. That'll be great.
Cool. And also, you mentioned Kids Club at Home. Beth or Jason put the link to Kids Club at Home on there, and that's just something parents. It's a way for you to sit down with your kids and watch something that's fun, that the kids will enjoy, that's going to point them to Jesus, give them some biblical truths, talk about stories from the Bible in the language that they can understand. And it's a tool for you as a parent to guide your kids spiritually. Mm-hmm. So Paul and Amy, we have loved having you on tonight. And Amy, I would love for you to just bless our parents, just pray for them.
Okay, great. God, thank you for this time right now. And we just pray blessings over all the parents watching right now. We just pray blessings of grace for their kids in this crazy time with back to school, whether that's online or in person. And we just pray that you would just help us to see where we can be intentional with our families on a day-to-day basis. God, just give us a heart and a desire to have a Sabbath and a rest day and to utilize this gift that you've given us. And I just pray that we would have just a great rest of the week and just learning to love our kids a little more. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Also, Amy, just thank you for praying, Amy. And Amy Tisher, who's on here, said, don't forget the Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for Kids Club parents. It's a closed group, and somebody is going to put that link in the comments too. So thanks for joining us. We will be back next week, same time, 8:30. And we're going to have Beth Peary, who is usually back behind, like reading your comments and throwing them up here for us. She will be here along with Bethany or Robertson. And we're going to be talking about navigating really hard stuff with our kids. And both of them have had Bethany's family, which she had 4 small children, and they just experienced unspeakable loss. And Beth had a really difficult health. Beth had cancer. And so she navigated that with her kids. So we're going to be talking about that next week. So please join in with our friends, Beth and Bethany, and have a great night. And I'm going to go to bed. So I hope you guys too. Yeah. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Paul and Amy.
Thanks so much.